Hi, I'm Dr. Bill King and part of the Medical Society of Eastern Pennsylvania and a member of the Philadelphia medical community. We've been all around the city talking to everybody we can. And this evening, we're having a roundtable discussion and a conversation to try to reach out to schools and parents, families, and other members of the community about how we can be back to school to stay. So what does that mean? That's trying to help us all think about how we can approach this upcoming school year, which is just so close, momentarily in front of us. Today is the 26th of August, 2021. The pandemic was February of 2020, is that right? Seems like it's been 100 years. Yeah. But that's 2020, remember it was called COVID-19 because in China it started in 2019, right? So for some kids, we are seeing kids who have been in this pandemic their entire high school. They've been in this we've seen babies who coming into kindergarten and have never seen their kindergarten teacher in person and now are going into first grade. So we know that we are really facing something that is different for us as a community, a world community, but a national community, and as a local greater Philadelphia community, which is we have a vaccine available now to all adults. We have a vaccine available to high school kids, to most of middle school kids. And but we are still in the middle of a surging pandemic. Everyone kind of hoped it would be over sooner, but it is not. So we wanted to just have this roundtable conversation and be able to be answering questions, figuring out among each other, talking to each other about what we're seeing and what we think we should do about it to get back to school today, to stay. And today, many kids are already back in school. So today we have Dr. Shelley Henderson. She is a family medicine resident and at University of Pennsylvania, and in the family medicine department. She is a prior school teacher down in Georgia. That's right.
Jacksonville, but you know.
Oh, I'm sorry, Florida. No, right. Yeah, my family's from Florida and Georgia. I was confused the two with you. So yeah, we're unrelated. Sorry about that. Yeah, so Florida, and we also have with us, Dr. Tawana Jones, who is from We Reign, which is a girls empowerment organization, and is doing great work with youth all around the city, and is a school psychologist here in the school district, and works with the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, who we had a big town hall yesterday with them, with hundreds of union members who were teachers and staff and faculty, trying to find out how they're going to respond to this coming school year. Miss Gwenny Love is a longtime community member, a member of Mantua Worldwide, which is a community organization in Mantua, the mighty corner of West Philly, that tries to help everyone know that they are their own neighborhood and community, and need and deserve that space and time. So she's been very involved with many activities with myself over the years, working with various National Medical Association, other groups, and is here with some of the youth that she works with Mantua Worldwide. And I'll let Ms. Love actually introduce some of those other folks. I don't know if she is. Ms. Gwenny, are you on?
I'm on. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, I'm in the nation's capital. They do things a little differently here.
Oh, wow. The nation's capital, you mean from Philadelphia, from when we first started the nation, or actually you're talking about Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C.
Oh, I thought Philly was, that was just the Revolutionary War.
Right. So yeah, so I just want to say hello to everyone. Hope everybody's doing well. And thank you, Dr. King, for having me. And I also want to acknowledge Dr. Jones and all of our wonderful guests tonight. And as many of you know, I'm Gwenny Love, and I'm from the community of Mantua. And we're going to, talk a lot about COVID, and we're going to answer your questions. Anything that you come up with, please, by all means, this is the platform to make your questions known. And so I will be your moderator tonight. And the idea is that we want our kids to go back to school, to stay in school. Our desire is for there to not be an interruption this year. And I don't know if you all had a chance to announce, but we are a part of Philly Counts, the Philly Counts Coalition, which consists of many groups coming together to help the greater Philadelphia community get through the COVID-19 pandemic. And we're going to answer, like I said, we're going to answer questions. We're also going to follow up. We would love to have your contact information. We want to make sure that we have you registered. And we really need for you to pass the word, because we want our children to stay safe. And so what I want to do tonight is jump into some questions that we were able to get from some of our youth in the area. And so, Dr. King, if you're okay, we can jump to some of those questions. We apparently have, I think we have one amazing youth with us tonight. We have our Corey with us, right, Dr. King?
That's right. We're all over the country right today. Actually, only the cool places apparently.
Right.
Philadelphia, Houston, DC. Atlanta, Jacksonville. My dad lived in Jacksonville. We're from Jacksonville.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool places. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Corey has expressed an interest in going to Drexel. So we can get him back to Philadelphia. Don't you think that would be grand?
That would be awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking Drexel or UPenn, one of the two. We'll see. I might end up in Philly.
All right. We'll see what we can do. I don't know. We'll keep our fingers crossed. All right. So, Doc, if you're ready, we're going to jump into some of these questions here. So, one of the questions is, can you estimate how long this pandemic and the quarantine will last?
Yeah, well, we know the answer to that. COVID tells us that answer, and that is when we all are immune to COVID. So we have to have immunity for the virus to stop circulating. It won't stop circulating because we want it. It won't stop circulating because we pass resolutions. It won't stop circulating because we want to go back to school. It won't stop circulating because the Treasury Department needs more tax money. It will stop circulating when it's either infected all of us, which is a terrible plan, or we've been immunized against a coronavirus infection, and before it generates variants that can evade our immunizations. So that's the race. A lot of times the press and the and just community, social media, people who are talking about when is this going to end? I'm tired of it. COVID doesn't get tired. COVID is a virus. And viruses are effectively inanimate. They just reproduce. They're like they're machines. They're little molecular machines. They're not made in a lab. They're made in nature. And this one, the coronavirus, probably did come. It has not come from bats, but bats carry this virus. They've been carrying it for thousands of years, and it really stayed in bats, and it doesn't bother bats. But apparently, in the Sichuan district in Wuhan area, many bats have COVID, and we're not clear whether it was from being collected in a lab or whether it was more likely from being collected in a market, and the bats being exposed to other animals in an animal market. The virus evolved, it transmitted to other animals, and then it probably infected a farmer or some other person, and it took off from there. The problem with coronavirus, this SARS coronavirus 2, COVID-19, is that it continues to reproduce very rapidly. It is spread by the air. It is very contagious, airborne, and the original coronavirus we thought took about 10 minutes unmasked. If someone has coronavirus and they were infected, they could remain contagious for up to a week or so. spreading the infection by breathing, and other people who were closer than 6 feet for more than 10 minutes without a mask would catch coronavirus. With Delta, we think that people without a mask closer than 6 feet can catch coronavirus with 2 deep breaths. So it's that much more contagious. It reproduces more quickly. It appears, this new variant, and it hangs out in the nose and generates a huge amount of virus in the nose, and it comes out of the nose more easily than it used to. And that's because as the virus infects a new person, millions of new persons, tens of millions of new persons, hundreds of millions of new persons, it gets to make little changes. It buys another lottery ticket. And when it makes those changes, it can infect. And so when it infects, it can sometimes infect in a new way. That's from viruses mutate. So they make little changes, like buying a new lottery ticket, new numbers, new try. So it happens randomly, but each time more people get infected because they're not immune, it spreads and it can change. And so we used to name it by the place where we saw it new. So we would call it the UK variant, then we would call it the South Africa variant, then we call it the Brazil variant, then we call it the New York City variant. There's too many places, and that wasn't making people happy. So now we name it after the Greek letter. So we called it the original COVID, and then UK was the Alpha variant, Delta, Gamma, and I'm sorry, and then Delta is actually the variant that came out of India. It seems to be the most infectious, and that is what's spreading right now. So this variant is so contagious. When people catch it, 2 breaths, if they can be contagious for a week, they may be asymptomatic for 3 days and have no idea they have an infection, and then they can spread it for up to a week and not really know they're very sick. But unfortunately, people who are vulnerable can die. And that's the thing that's so dangerous. And it will keep spreading until everybody else is infected. And that's what we are so worried about. We are worried about the fact that coronavirus is changing, it's spreading, and there are 90 million Americans left who are unvaccinated. And a lot of those are children. So, is the recording back? Are we good?
Oh yeah, that was a different system.
Okay. So we just want we know we want it to end, but it will only end when we get everybody who can be vaccinated in one part of the world, here in the United States. When most of us are vaccinated, 85%, 70, 80, 90% of us are vaccinated, then it doesn't have as many people to spread to. And when very few of us are vaccinated, when it's right now in some places like Philly, parts of Houston, it's 25%. 25%. That means 3 out of 4 people it can infect. And we can talk about what else, how Delta can bother people who are vaccinated, but it's much less dangerous with vaccinated people, and it's much more contagious and much more infectious when you're unvaccinated. Yep. That's all I got for that.
Yeah. Well,
I hear Senator Hughes is talking, so we're happy to. He's been instrumental in trying to get the word out, and we really are trying to get this message together and get it out to the schools and get families to listen.
hello, Senator.
Hey, thank you. Hey, Dr. King, I don't want to belabor the conversation. We try all kinds of methods, all kinds of methodologies to try to communicate to folks the importance of the vaccine, why it's necessary. You give an excellent presentation on the history, the context, and how it morphs. For me, I had to experience 2 things, and I experienced them all in 24 hours. And not that I was already there, but I want you to hear what I experienced in a 24-hour period. Very good friend of mine, someone that many of you know. His son, adult son, Dr. King, you're gonna really appreciate this. Adult son was in the hospital
Yeah.
waiting for some important important necessary surgery around his heart. Was not COVID related, but the surgery obviously was very important and very necessary. Could not get a bed so that that surgery could be performed because that system was overrun with COVID related patients.
Yeah.
We do
Yeah.
what we do. We do what we do for our constituents, and we were able to move him to another system where he was able to get care. Okay. But I just want you to think, if you're a mother of a son or daughter, and that child, or you're a friend, you have a friend, all right, that, or yourself, or family member, or yourself is in that situation where you need some important surgery or important care, and you can't get it taken care of because the system is overrun with COVID-related patients, which are essentially individuals who don't have to be sick. So that's the first part. The second part is I was meeting with this friend of mine and a couple other friends, and we were talking about some stuff the following day after I got the call about the problem with the son needing to get the surgery but not being able to get it. Was meeting with the father and a couple friends, and we were having a meal in an outside location. And I said to them, remember what this strip was like in March, April, and May and June of 2020. It was like a ghost town. And if you remember our communities in the beginning times of this pandemic, they were like ghost towns. Everybody had to stay home. Everybody was shut down. The businesses were shut down. Everything was stopped.
Yeah. We remember.
We don't want to go back to that. And if we don't take care of this, as the good doctor has advised us, we will be back in that space. Because one of the key things that he said is that this virus mutates, and its current mutation has got it more treacherous than what it previous was. And it could mutate again. That's
it will.
Exactly.
We give it a chance.
So that's why we gotta get ahead of this, take this vaccine, control the dynamic, control the narrative, so that we don't want our communities to go back to ghost town. And we certainly don't want friends or family members who need important medical attention not to be able to get it because we're overrun, our health systems are overrun with COVID-related patients who, if they had taken the vaccine, likely would not have been there. So that's all I'm gonna say. I could proselytize for much longer, but I'm not, okay?
We appreciate.
I appreciate y'all pulling this together, and I wanted to just jump on for a few minutes. I wanted that recent experience, Dr. King, I wanted people to hear that because that's something that just happened this past weekend.
Yeah. So Dr. Henderson, tell us, thank you, Senator. Dr. Henderson, tell us what's the hospital, how is the hospital dealing with this Delta surge?
Just like everyone else, we're heading in the wrong direction. So I'm going back on service over at Presbyterian next week. And, the last time I was on service, it was, what was it, October and November. We had one, maybe two cases on our, we have a smaller family medicine service compared to, what we were seeing in June and July prior to that. So, heading in a positive direction. And now it's just the opposite. So, we're seeing people coming in sicker than we saw them in October. Even the patients that we had in October, November, we're doing a little bit better. We thought we were getting better at how to manage this, what medications to give, how to support people. And now we're seeing we're transferring more people to the ICU than we were at the end of last year. We're seeing younger people who are coming in sick. That's one of my big areas of concern is that, a lot of my older patients, they're, I ask, you've been vaccinated? Oh yeah, I got my vaccine, as soon as it was offered to me. And a lot of my younger patients, and I get it, there's a lot of questions. And so it's why I love having opportunities like this, where we can answer those questions, but also in those visits, sometimes the drastic majority of my visit is, let's talk about it. What questions do you want to know? Let's talk about what's in it. Let's talk about, what the studies have shown. But my big concern is that that's a large portion of that unvaccinated population are young adults and our kids. And we're just seeing more young people. I'm hearing more and more stories of people in their 30s and their 40s losing their lives to this. And that didn't necessarily need to be the case. The first surge we saw along similar lines, we weren't seeing a whole lot of sick kids. You were seeing a whole lot of, asymptomatic kids. And, oftentimes, we worried about, that them transmitting to the adults and the immunocompromised people in their lives. And now we're seeing more sick kids. We're seeing more kids, admitted over at CHOP. We're seeing kids getting sicker. We're seeing, in some cases, kids losing their battle to this. And again, does not have to be the case, especially for our 12 and over group. We have options. I know the day with my daughter, she turned 12. She's like, all right, so we're going today. I'm like, oh wait, it's Sunday. Let me schedule your appointment. And 2 days later, we were getting her first shot. And then, for our kids that are too young, just making sure that we're creating a bubble around them to protect them from this virus, and making sure all the adults and the older children in their lives are vaccinated. So it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking. I know, Texas has already shut down. I'm watching, my brother, he still teaches down in Jacksonville. And he's already, one of the schools just went all to virtual, and they're only a couple weeks in the semester. And so, it's definitely scary. This particular variant is just hitting harder. And, we just, there's not enough of the population, not enough of our population. That's the thing that I'm worried about everyone, but looking at how this particular virus has absolutely ravaged the Black community, it makes me nervous to know so many, individuals in our community are unvaccinated. So to think what that variant can then come and do is extremely nerve-wracking. So I'm nervous. I'll let you know what I see coming out the hospital next month, but I don't think it's going to look good.
What's your mute? Gwen, yeah.
Yeah, I was saying, thank you so much, Dr. Henderson. Thank you, Senator. It's just, it's really just amazing to have people on the front line who really, really care. One of the questions we got in the chat was, and Dr. King did answer it, there was a question wondering about the statistics of children who have been affected by COVID, children under 18.
Well, yeah, so I was saying that, the dashboard, in terms of looking at the data, is John Hopkins COVID-19 dashboard. Phila.gov kind of runs part of the state dashboard, which is not always perfectly up to date. But I have not been looking at that data this week. I've been busy just trying to get people to get vaccinated. Because I don't want to really, I don't even want to know how many people are not doing something, or, people we're losing. I'm just trying to I'm protecting the people we can get protected. What I can tell you is, in my own practice, since Sunday, I've had, in June, so for example, we might have one or two cases of even any colds or any kind of upper respiratory infections. We were having, one or two a day, very few. Remember back, 2019 or 18, we have colds 5 or 10 a day, every hour. But right now, we are seeing, I've seen 6 kids just in our practice that are coming in febrile with cold symptoms and cough. And so far, 2 out of the 6 are COVID positive. The third one appears to be COVID, and the other 2 kids are also appear to be COVID. So it's 4 or 5 families already. So we're starting to see, and that kind of surge in a single practice where we're seeing, I'm seeing 20 or 30 people a day, and I'm seeing 3 or 4 or 5 of them are starting to be COVID. That is like the spring of 2020. And the problem is, it appears to be kids. And the reason, of course, kids are catching COVID is because all the old adults are vaccinated. The vaccination rate among adults older than 60 or 70, it's 75, 80%, and even in our community as well. It's high levels of immunity. But with children, of course, most kids are unvaccinated. But I am seeing, so I just saw a mom, or I talked to a mom on the phone, because mom, if the kids are coming and they're calling and they're saying, I'm febrile and I'm coughing, you can't come in our office. We're only seeing well visits. We can't have kids coming in and giving COVID to newborn babies, to other parents who are unvaccinated. So it's going to be back where it was difficult again, where we're saying, you can't come in the office. We have to do telemedicine. We're going to tell you, go get some vitamin D, go get a pulse oximeter. If you're feeling sick, call back. We'll try to send you to the emergency room. That is no way to fight an infection when you could be vaccinated. So this mom, whose son is COVID positive on Sunday, she called me on Tuesday, and I begged her, Mom, your son is getting through this pretty good. His oxygen's good. His cough is improved. His fever's breaking, but you and your husband are unvaccinated. Your test on Monday was negative, so you may not be infected. Go right now, today, and go get your COVID shot. You have been not getting your COVID shot since you could have gotten it, and your boss told you to get it since June. It is now the end of August, and you still are looking at social media while she's on the phone to me, and saying, well, I'm still worried because look, this meme says that there's computer chips, and there's not chips in your vaccine. There's chips in your pantry, and there's computer chips in your phone. There's no chips in your vaccine. So, but the problem is her son, she's going to be taking care of a child who is COVID positive. You're not wearing a mask in your own house. Your son is sick. You're going to be right next to him. And mom has multiple risk factors. I am anxious to I don't know what about her catching COVID today or tomorrow, and then her being in the hospital next week. And then who's supposed to take care of her son if she's in the hospital in the intensive care unit? What about her husband? What if they're both in the hospital? What about the rest of the kids? What I'm worried about is parents catching COVID from their kids and kids being orphans. The infection rate, the death rate is low. The death rate is low for children from COVID, but the death rate for their parents is high. That's what I'm worried about, is the parents who have been waiting and delaying, and now their grandmothers are vaccinated. Their great grandmothers are vaccinated, but that parent age, 30s and 40s, don't you think, Dr. Henderson, isn't that the group that seems to be kind of?
That's where we're seeing the surge. Yeah, that's definitely what we're seeing the surge.
Yeah, they get sick. It's parent age, because elderly are vaccinated. The kids seem to have a little less severe. The young adults, some of them can be very sick. I just had a churchman friend of mine whose 29-year-old niece, his only niece, he got his shot. I had his wife get her shot. I busted the whole family. I didn't talk to this niece, and that 29-year-old niece died last month of COVID.
Well, let me say, but it's the statistics is just quite alarming, and the closer that we get to school starting is just, because I work with kids, and so is, the reality is hitting it, just hitting me more and more.
Yeah.
You know, we want these kids to stay in school. And Corey has a few questions. I think he has like 5, but we're going to see if he can take a stab with at least one for right now, concerning school. So what do you got, Corey?
Thank you so much, Ms. Gwen. Thank you, Mr. King, Dr. King. I think one of the main questions I have is, school is coming up in a few weeks for me, and I know that for a lot of people, there's different groups. Some people care about COVID, some people aren't really concerned. How do we bring up those topics? How do we bring up the topics of getting vaccinated? What's the appropriate way, to bring up those conversations? I know for some people, it's a personal matter, especially, in Texas, a lot of people don't want to share information about the vaccine, whether they got the vaccine or not, don't want to talk about it, making it political, all that kind of stuff. How do you recommend bringing up this topic of getting vaccinated? How can we do that in a way that is most convincing and also helpful?
Well, one, so there's a couple issues. One is that, so for example, in my office, if so when kids come, so I come to the office, I open the door, and there's, a 14-year-old or 12-year-old or whatever, and their mask is halfway down. I say, hey, put your mask up. This is a medical office, you got to put your mask up.
You cut out for a second, Dr. King.
I think it froze.
Doc, your screen is frozen if you can hear.
Yes, that. So when somebody is if they have a mask down or they're not vaccinating, that's where it's sometimes it might be useful to say, hey, I was wondering, so are you, I have a mask, I don't have my mask on. Are you vaccinated? So I'm vaccinated. Are you? So that's one of the questions that you want to. So for example, me in Home Depot, I'm an old guy. I go to Home Depot all the time. And I wear my mask. Most people wear their mask at Home Depot. They don't wear their mask at the corner store. So if I go into Sunoco, I'm the only one wearing a mask. So, but in that case, if I'm in front of somebody, I say, hey, are you vaccinated? And they say no. I said, well, can you put on your mask? So now that's a little bit forward. But in that case, what you're really trying to convey is, hey, I'm vaccinated. I'm not contagious. Are you contagious? So we, back in 1918, everybody talked to each other about the flu, and that, and during the bubonic plague, people talked to each other about, do you have the plague? Show me your spots. Do you have smallpox? So people were worried of dying from other people in front of them who might have things. So we've kind of tried to be polite. So you what? Get infected and die? What are we polite about?
Well,
so that's one question. The second question is, in terms of your concern, is, hey, I was wondering, man, I got my COVID shot, and I was wondering, like, were you thinking about getting it?
right.
So in that case, it's the compassionate thing of just trying to say, hey, I'm here now, and I feel a lot safer with my shot. So how you feel? How you doing? So, because when people say, oh, I don't believe in that shot, I was like, well, yeah, I get it, but I mean, I feel like I like my immunity. So why do you feel okay? Why do you feel safe without a shot?
Well, to piggyback on your comment about being inside Home Depot. So the individuals who were online, a couple of people left, but the individuals who I see right now, they represent like 3 or 4 different demographics. We have one person who works in the prison system. We have one person who has an elderly parent. We have one person who works with foster children, another person who actually works with university students, and then we actually have a youth person here. So we have these demographics. Most, from what I just explained, are adults who are around children. And so you have households where you have people perhaps coming home from prison. And as we can recall, that was one of the areas that was attacked terribly when COVID was at its height. I don't know what the statistics are now, because for some reason, people who are in the prison system don't really get a lot of empathy. But we do have fathers and mothers who are going home to families that actually have children. We have children who are in the foster care system who unfortunately end up migrating from house to house, because some kids, that's just the way the system is. And then some kids actually age out of the system. We also have university students where, not to put place a stereotype on university students, but they like going to clubs and bars, and they like house parties and hanging out. So we have all of these issues. And then we have young people who may perhaps take heed to what you're sharing, may wear their mask, but then they go home to an environment that they cannot control because it's usually an adult controlled environment. And now we have that issue. So I'm afraid to ask you if you could speak to that. You, Dr. Henderson, you want to take a stab at that? That was a lot.
Summarizing all of it, it's going to be a mess. It is going to be a mess until enough of us get vaccinated. I think, one of the things you hit on was, colleges, kids are going back to campus, which is wonderful. I love that. There's nothing like the campus experience. I don't think, the best virtual education, be it K through 12 or undergrad, is not equivalent to being in person. So that's wonderful. However, it can really only be safe when everybody's vaccinated. My absolute fear is what's going to happen specifically when it comes to colleges. We're sending everybody back to campus. I had someone I met the other day had just dropped his son off, first day, freshman year. And I guarantee night one, he's like, oh yeah, I've been calling and no answer. I'm like, because he's at a party. I'm this college. He's this first night on campus, he's at a party. And I guarantee there's going to be hardly any masks there. That's because it's college. And so, I talked to him the next day. He's like, yeah, he was at a party. And he said he was the only one there, with a mask on. My fear is they're going to start having these huge outbreaks on college campuses. They're going to shut back down and they're going to send those kids home. And now you have, people who are coming home who may or may not have been exposed. They're exposing, mom, dad, younger brother, younger sister, grandma, grandpa, everybody. And so, the way we prevent that from happening is ensuring our kids get, vaccinated before they go off. And that way, even if they were exposed, they're a much, lower chance of getting infected coming back home. And then honestly, I mean, my kids are younger, so I don't have to worry with that right now. But I know if campuses started closing down and I had a college kid coming home, I love you, but you're quarantining for 2 weeks. Vaccinated, we're going to keep you separate for a couple of weeks, make sure everything's fine, and then incorporate you back into the household. I would recommend it for anyone who's got someone coming back from situations like that. I even think about myself with, as we're getting more and more mutations, as the virus has more opportunities to spread. Every new opportunity to spread is another opportunity to create more mutations. And so, in the back of my mind is what happens when, we get a mutation that our vaccines aren't responsive to. We're blessed right now that, for, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, they are responding very well to the current variants. But what happens when that changes? And, as a healthcare worker, I'm coming home to my family every day. So, if we're heading back in the direction that we were before, I need to kind of end up going back to, my 2020, where I had to send my kids, away for 4 months at a time. And no one wants to do that. And so if we can just put a little net now, which means getting vaccinated, wearing our masks, social distancing, all those things that we may not want to do, that we really need to do because we're heading in the absolute wrong direction. So if we want to prevent a complete shutdown, we have to do the things we need to do.
Yeah, I hear you. And what's interesting is, and thank you so much, Dr. Henderson. You mentioned about college students going home and they have younger siblings. They have other people in their household, but in particular, the younger sisters and brothers who have less control over their environment. And again, that speaks to Corey, his age group. Corey, what do you think about what Dr. Henderson just shared with us?
Yeah, I know she was talking mostly about university students and college students, but I think the same thing, applies to high school. People are still going to be engaging. People are still going to be not wearing the mask. I think for some people, a lot of people, especially my age, is the thought process of I'm vaccinated, so I don't need to wear my mask. That's some people that people think about. I think that's another thing that's going to come up in high school as we, go into the school year. Even though we want to also convince people to get vaccinated, I think it's still also important for us to continue to communicate the importance of masks as well. So yeah, I definitely think that this coming school year, there's going to be challenges, but we have to do what we can do now to stop those challenges, and like you talked about, those variants from coming up, from getting worse than even more worse than from what it is right now. So.
The CDC guidelines around quarantine and around separation, and people have seen like this Delta variant. People can say, oh, they're COVID positive, but they were vaccinated, and so but they have Delta, and so what does that mean? Well, here's how immunity. I worked in in infectious disease labs. I've worked with viruses. I've worked in facilities where you do the biohazard suits and all those kind of things. And part of that work is kind of understanding what viruses are trying to do and what your immune system can do. So the thing about when you're vaccinated and the COVID vaccines, especially the mRNA vaccines, they give you that, they present that spike protein to your immune system. Your immune system generates antibodies. Those antibodies and the cells that fight your infection in your immune system, the T cells and B cells. Those kind of cells, when you get the vaccine, your T cells and B cells saw the important spike protein, the key to that virus. That's the key that virus uses to open your cells and get in and then destroy your cells and make a million more copies. So that's the key to the house. The virus, if you get the vaccine, you develop immunity, you start developing immunity and antibodies and T cells and things within 3 to 5 days. So you are developing a defense against COVID. Even with that first shot, within 3 to 5 days, you're starting to get some immunity. Now, you don't know how significant that will be. That immunity keeps building over about 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, you really have built a big defense against that particular virus. When you get a booster shot, your immune system says, oh, I've seen this before. Go, this is it. We've drilled on this. It's game on. We're in the playoffs now. This is what we've been training on. So your immune system ramps up your immunity way up with the second exposure, because it's just like anything. If Trump came back, man, I would be all over it. So the first time I was a little slow to get voter registration and sign up and join stuff. But if he came back, I would be in those things immediately. Your immune system's like that. First exposure, it kind of like, okay, yeah, let's do something. That second exposure is like, game on. This is what we saw, spike protein. So the thing about that, when you're vaccinated, you have immune protection in your bloodstream. COVID infects your blood vessels. It binds, that spike protein binds to the ACE receptor. That's in every blood vessel in your body. So when you're infected with the live virus, that virus grows millions of copies and starts spreading in your bloodstream throughout your whole body, heart, lungs, kidney, all over your body. So brain, it tries to get to your brain lining. And the problem with all that is you have no immune defense for 5 days. But when you're vaccinated, you have immune defense within 5 minutes. So when you get Delta in your nose when you're vaccinated, which I may get in the next month, I'm trying to tell these kids put their masks up, but I feel very different having serum immunity, meaning my organs are protected from infection by the virus. And then what COVID does when it infects the organs, it can really go really crazy with inflammation and cause organ failure. So you get a full body COVID infection, you get a lung infection, you get pneumonia, and that pneumonia leads to lung respiratory failure, you die. You get a heart infection, heart failure, you die. You get a brain infection, long COVID brain fog, you have dementia type symptoms. You have kidney failure. So When COVID goes through your whole body, that's what's so deadly about it. When you're vaccinated, COVID is not doing that. It is stopped at your nasal tissue mainly. So you may be carrying COVID in your nose for a few days, like a cold, but you are not really, your immunity from vaccination is protecting you from body infection. From having, from potentially dying. So that's the difference. When they say, but people who got the vaccine still got Delta. No, they carry Delta. So they can carry it along to someone, but COVID is not going to really get a chance to kill or cause real damage till it gets to an unvaccinated, non-immune person. It's like the burglar is going from porch to porch to porch. It can go, you can carry it if you're vaccinated, but when it gets to the open door, that's the unvaccinated person, then it breaks in. It breaks in, sets up shop, and that becomes the burglar's house. So then from there, he spreads. So the point is, being vaccinated is very different in terms of being exposed to Delta. You can spread it to people who could be vulnerable, like kids. But you yourself are quite well protected by your vaccine immunity. So when you tell people, man, it's a big difference when you have a bulletproof vest. It is.
You'll still get shot at, but you'll be protected.
You're just way less likely to die. That's the difference.
Well, well, to piggyback on what you're saying, someone has a question, Katina has a question in the chat, and she's asking, is there a major difference in the COVID vaccination compared to immunizations we've received as children, such as chickenpox, mumps, etc.?
I can start with this one, if that's all right. So the biggest difference, especially for the Pfizer and the Moderna, is going to be this mRNA technology. Now, at the root of all vaccines, just like Dr. King was sharing, it's, the whole purpose is to create antibodies. So oftentimes when we typically think about vaccines, you have either a deactivated form of a virus, or a portion of a virus, or something that's injected into our body that our body can recognize, or okay, this is bad, let's create antibodies to it. And now you have these stored up antibodies, so when they see the virus in real time, it can respond. I'm sorry, my cat gets very excited when I start talking. In this situation, the main thing that's different, specifically with the Moderna and the Pfizer, is that, instead of a little portion of the virus being injected into our bodies, it's this mRNA. And so, oftentimes we learn in high school, we learn in biology, that we have DNA in our bodies. That DNA is turned to mRNA, that's messenger mRNA. It just carries the message. And that messenger RNA is then turned into protein. And so the Pfizer and the Moderna contain that messenger RNA for the spike protein on the COVID virus. And so when it comes into our body then turns that mRNA into protein, so that like a portion of that little spike protein, our body sees it and makes antibodies. It's like, nope, this is bad. This is, not normal. Make the antibodies. And so now the next time our body sees that virus, our antibodies respond right away. So this technology, one of the things I like to stress is, okay, this new technology, I don't want anything that's brand new. It hasn't been studied enough. The technology is not new. This mRNA technology has been around for a long time. And in fact, it's been around for such a time as this. Pretty much they realized early on they can use it to create vaccines and to create them quickly. Our typical way of creating vaccines, when it's something like a new virus that's spreading quickly like this, it takes too long. And so having this mRNA technology, you can, as soon as you can sequence this virus, you can make this mRNA vaccine very, very quickly. And so this is the first time they've been able to utilize it in this situation. And it's done exactly what we wanted it to do. You can make a vaccine, you can make it quickly, and it works. It's incredibly effective. One of the things I like to stress, because you also see memes and information out there saying, oh, well, it changes your DNA. So this process goes from DNA to mRNA to protein. It cannot go backwards. So when this mRNA comes into our body, it cannot go backwards into DNA. It can't change your DNA. It does not forever change who you are. That mRNA is around for a second. You make that protein, you get the antibodies, the mRNA is gone. So that's the biggest difference between the vaccines that we've had as children, but the ultimate goal is to make the antibodies, and that's what this does.
That's right. And the Pfizer and Moderna, they really are using very almost identical technology. And the reason is actually there's two sets of Penn professors that worked on it originally back in the 80s and 90s. And one of them went to Pfizer, actually BioNTech, and one of them went to Moderna. So it's like the two competitors, it's like, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, they broke it up or whatever. So these two, the scientists who kind of were, had worked on this technology the most, they went to the two companies. So that's why these two companies kind of were able to do this the most, because they had the two science teams, and so they're virtually identical, Pfizer and Moderna, the way they made them there. And the reason is they use this this mRNA copy machine. The reason vaccines were not made that way before, the old way of brewing a vaccine and letting a virus grow it, or brewing it in body cells, it is very slow. It takes almost a year. Some of the other vaccine manufacturers have not even finished figuring out how to get their COVID vaccine done. So there's 3 of them that are still not, they still haven't submitted them to even work yet for study, because they can't get the manufacturing to work. With mRNA, it's kind of digital technology, so that you get the code, the machine types up the code. And so people ask, well, how come you didn't make vaccines this way before? It's very expensive to set up an mRNA vaccine plant. It costs more than $1 billion. To set up a regular vaccine plant, it's like $100 million. So before, companies were like, we're not spending $1 billion. We could do this in a year, and we can spend 1/10 of that. Why would we spend $1 billion? The difference was, this time, this pandemic was going to potentially kill millions of people, and the government gave $1 or $2 billion to 10 companies. From those 10, 3 of them actually, the vaccine didn't work, and so they didn't even submit a vaccine for study. They couldn't make it work. The way they all tried different ways. Some of them tried to kill the virus. Some tried to grow it. Some tried to make a protein. Some tried to make DNA. Some made RNA. So it ends up, the 2 mRNA ones, the technology just worked quickly. The Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca, they use this, what's called viral vector. They use a cold virus to deliver a DNA message. It works, but it is not quite as, it's a little sketchier and trickier to make it not, it has side effects, these blood clots and things like that. So Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca are not, they are very safe, but the Moderna, Pfizer are just working safer. And then there's 2 or 3 others that just aren't even out yet, because they aren't working. So the point is, when people are saying, oh, they pushed this out so quick, no, all 10 companies raced, and only 2 really crossed the line, and 1 kind of came in 3rd place. So we are getting the vaccines that prove themselves to be safe. They weren't picked. They were the ones that showed, no, to 100 million doses. I didn't get my shot when there were 100,000 people that got it. I waited for 1 million. I waited for 10 million. And now people are waiting for 200 million people have gotten these vaccines. What are you waiting for? There's almost nobody who hasn't gotten it. Oh, Gwenny, it's mute. Hey.
I forgot what I was going to say. No, I'm just joking. So my next question that I actually have here is, to piggyback on that, like, when we think about the children who have been impacted, and this is kind of like a sensitive question, because I know how much you love children, and I would hate for you to have to reflect on this next question, but out of curiosity, what has been your experience with children coming? I know you were saying, like, if they have symptoms, that you ask the parents to not bring the kids in, that they may need to just go straight to the emergency room. But what is your experience with having dealt with children who have actually had COVID?
Well, so it's 2 things I've seen. And, now it's, unfortunately, I've seen, dozens of children who've gotten COVID. Now, the young adults who got it, what I've seen is that they felt fine and they were relatively indifferent. And that breaks my heart, because several of those kids infected, one of them infected their grandpa and he died. Another one of my patients who was had gone down traveling to for fun last winter. She came back and one of her older aunts caught it and she died. But then the kids who have gotten COVID and been sick, it is traumatic to be in the hospital. It is traumatic to be in the hospital for a week on oxygen. And but the adults that get COVID, it is being sick in the hospital with a respiratory infection where you can't breathe. Every breath you feel like you're struggling for breath and suffocating. It's terrible to watch. And we have a vaccine that can keep you from having that suffering. And when people catch COVID who are sick, 10 days, 14 days, 21 days, they suffer. And some of them come out and some of them don't. I caught COVID in around Thanksgiving last year. I didn't have to go to the hospital, but it was awful. I was, for 10 days, it was, me and my wife got it. Our kids, they stayed away from us. They're teenagers. They don't want to be around us anyway. So they stayed away from us. They did not catch COVID. And, we did. And my wife is still mad at me about that. She knows I caught it at work and I gave it to her, I'm sure. But 10 days into it, I lost my ability to understand English for a week. I'm a doctor. One of my colleagues, she lost when the COVID brain fog descended on her, she lost her ability to understand medicine and math, and she's out of practice. And, I have other friends who caught COVID. This is back in the winter. I just took off my heart monitor last month. The long COVID says, no, you got to watch your heart. When you catch COVID, it affects your heart. It's hard to know how long it affects your heart. We don't know yet. We don't know if your memory will be perfectly normal again. We hope so. We have no idea. We know vaccinated people don't have these problems, but we know that people who catch COVID, it appears that long COVID, having symptoms, whether you had symptoms at the time of your infection, COVID affecting your kidney, your lungs, your heart, or your brain, it appears that occurs between 30%, 1 in 3, and half of everyone who catches COVID has some impact that goes beyond months, 6 months, a year, maybe a lifetime, we don't know. But it is not worth taking the chance. I'm telling you, as somebody who, as soon as I get my vaccination in January, I drove up to Reading in a snowstorm. That was the nearest site I could get during that time. I said, give me my vaccine. I do not want to take another one of these bullets. This bullet almost took my brain away. And so that's why I am desperate to get people to listen and don't take the bullet. Don't get infected. Just because you heard your bulletproof vest might hurt you, the vaccine is not dangerous. Pfizer and Moderna, we've seen no significant bad outcomes.
I have 2 questions for you, Dr. King. I'm going to ask you those questions, and I'm going to ask a question for people to leave the answer in the chat. Your experience with COVID, do you now, what's the aftermath of what you feel as a result of having had COVID? And are you, on a scale from 1 to 10, how secure do you feel in regards to, I don't want to say
Yeah,
this.
just where I'm at, yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't feel, so I regained my strength and everything within about 6 weeks. That's a long time.
What was the fog like? What was the brain fog like?
So I don't speak Spanish. I try to understand Spanish. I love Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love Puerto Rico. We go to Puerto Rico. And when I go to Puerto Rico, I try to speak Spanish, and they tell me, no español, por favor. They tell me, don't speak Spanish. You don't understand it. You don't get it. You don't understand the language. Right. I went to China, and I tried to understand Chinese, and it just, I couldn't, I heard the words, and it didn't make sense. I knew a few words. So when I go to to Puerto Rico, you know, I know pollo means chicken, arroz means rice. I know what the food means. But that week, that's how English sounded to me. So I could not understand I heard the words. I knew, you know, are you okay, Mr. King? I was like, oh, King, that's a funny word. Okay, I wonder what that means. You, is that you? Is that, so I could think somehow, but I did not understand language. So, you know, my dad is 85 and he's kind of getting he's getting a little senile. He's getting a little dementia. So that week, me and my dad were the same.
Wow.
You know, so the difference is my dementia cleared, you know, but thank God, because if it hadn't, I wouldn't be talking to y'all about getting your COVID shot. I would be in assisted living, you know. So my point is that fog cleared, but if without vaccination, you can get reinfected. You do not have significant immunity from your natural infection because COVID attacks the immune system. And your immune system is deranged by attacking COVID when you're sick. Much of what causes the damage is just like the soldiers that liberate the village. You know, a lot of times they flatten the village. So your immune system, when it tries to fight a full body COVID infection, there is damage all over the place from that fight. So when you get the vaccine, it's not a fight. There's no war. It's just training. Your immune system sees that spike protein for 3 days, it makes its antibodies, and it goes back to its barracks. When you are fighting COVID, you have a full-on war in your body between a virus and your immune system. And that is damaging. Everybody who's had inflammatory illness, who's had lupus or anything like that, that's your immune system attacking. When your immune system attacks COVID, it attacks you too. So you don't want to have your immune system trying to fight a virus all over your body because it attacks everywhere. The virus is in your cells, you know, so it has to attack you when it attacks the virus. So that fight, I could feel that fight. I could feel the fog come over me. I could feel the weakness go out, my strength go out of me. And it was not clear that that was going to end. My immune system won, but it was not worth the fight. Now, I didn't have access to a vaccine, but once I had a vaccine, the difference is my immunity stops COVID when I'm vaccinated instead of COVID already being spread throughout my whole body before my immune system starts working. Remember, 5 days for immunity for your immune system to start fighting back. So COVID fights for 5 days in you before. When I caught COVID Thanksgiving, the day before, 2 days before Thanksgiving, my immune system wasn't really fighting back until that weekend, and it didn't win until another week. So my point is, being a casualty of war is what happens when you catch COVID. Maybe it was a small war, maybe it was a world war, but you don't want to be in that situation.
Well,
That's what I'm telling people.
Yeah, which is interesting because someone placed in the chat that if they caught COVID and after the COVID symptoms cleared and they had no after effects, they're wondering, since their body perhaps created antibodies, would they need to get the vaccine? They had COVID.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Henderson.
Yes. So what we're seeing is that immunity does not last in the same way that what the immunity one gets from being vaccinated. So you're seeing lots of reinfections after people have been been infected previously. And so the recommendation now is, as soon as you are done with your quarantine, if you've been infected with COVID, as soon as you're done with your quarantine, you can go and get vaccinated. The only difference is if you receive monoclonal antibodies, so it's a treatment now that some people are getting after they've been exposed or become COVID positive. If you get that treatment, then you should wait 90 days after receiving those antibodies before getting vaccinated. But if you just had COVID, that immunity is not going to last the same. So you do still need to go and get vaccinated.
Yep. Yeah, and COVID doesn't attack the immune system. It's just that your body suffers from your immune system fighting with COVID.
Ah,
And now, we're actually, I shouldn't say that. That's not fair to say, because COVID has 29 proteins in the bomb. You know, it looks like a little bomb, right? It's like a little landmine with all the spikes. Those spikes are basically the triggers, and it sticks to your cells. It comes in and it blows up. So it ends up that more than a dozen of the proteins that COVID makes, when it takes over your cells and starts making itself and makes rebuilds its little COVID bomb. About 10 of those proteins appear to be disarming or altering immunity. So meaning that COVID seems to have a lot of immune attacking proteins and proteins that make your immune system act abnormal and mess with your immune system. So of the 30 proteins, you know, maybe 5 or 10 are part of the shell, but 10 of them appear to be kind of weapons that COVID uses to disarm your immune system and alter and mess with you while it's infecting you. So that's what's so scary. The difference is the vaccine does not use all those other proteins that all those weapons that COVID has. It only shows that one little spike protein, the message for the spike protein. And so that builds just that your one immune defense against that one part of COVID, which is the important part, which is what it looks like.
I have a question about a person's immune system. So I'm going to sort of mesh a few different thoughts together. One thought is there are people who believe that if you eat healthy, if you do perhaps intermittent fasting, if you get the proper amount of sleep and rest, and just overall eating healthy and living a healthy lifestyle, some people think that that's a way to protect themselves from COVID. Can you speak to that?
When you are exposed, when somebody has COVID and they exhale hundreds of thousands of viral particles. Those viral particles float through the air. If you don't have a mask on, you inhale several thousand viral particles. With Delta, it appears that you only need to have inhaled dozens to 100 viral particles in order to be infected. So it doesn't matter how much vitamin D you took. It doesn't matter how much vitamin C you took. It doesn't matter how much ginger you drank. Those viral particles will attach to your nose, and that spike protein will attach to your ACE receptors. Those viruses will enter your cells, and those viruses will begin reproducing billions of copies within 2 days. Your immune system will start making antibodies and defenses, and notice that assault about day 3 or 4. So the problem is, if you had a home invasion and 911 did not come for 3 days, you are in big trouble. So my healthiness and my eating healthy and trying to be a healthy person and going to church and being and praying and meditating and eating vegetables, going to the garden, that helped me survive the massive beatdown and whooping that I took for 20 days because my body was infected with COVID. My immune system responded. It responded 5 days late. When I'm vaccinated, my immune system stops the invasion. It stops the war. So your healthiness will help you survive and the war and the infection, but you will be infected unless you have immunity, unless your immune system has seen the spike protein. And it hasn't until you get infected. So no, it won't help you at all avoid infection.
So to make sure we're on the same page, so you're saying that a person could have adequate antibodies, but the virus will, if a person has been exposed, they've been exposed.
She wanted to know if she could get something to eat.
And then their body would at that point produce antibodies. It's
No,
not
no, if you are unvaccinated, you are not just exposed, you have no antibodies to COVID, so you are infected. that infection goes past your nose, through your whole body, through your bloodstream. It rapidly reproduces because you have no antibodies for 3 days. It doesn't matter. We have lots of antibodies to other things. We don't have anything to this brand new thing. So I have antibodies to lots of versions of the flu because I've got my flu vaccines for many years. But I don't have any antibodies until I got my COVID vaccine to COVID-19, SARS-CoV-19. So each germ has to have its own defense. It doesn't matter. It's like the computer virus. If you just because you got one computer virus, the next virus is different. So you have to have the defense against each new virus. The vaccine protects against all the variants of this. This is the same virus changing itself to try to evade our immune system. So far, it hasn't done it. The vaccine immunity generates enough different kind of antibodies to catch the variants so far. But no, so the main point that's important to understand is do not think your health lets you survive illness, but your immunity is not. That's a specific defense against one invasion, which is COVID. If you didn't get, and catching COVID, your body is so, we don't know exactly why, but we don't exactly know exactly how this is true, but it is very clear after COVID, your defense against COVID was weakened by the infection. So you have weakened immune response when you have been infected for 20 days. Your immune system has been exhausted by that fight, and you don't mount a very strong long-term immunity. That's why we think when you get vaccinated, you develop the vaccine is made just to show that one protein to your immune system, so it makes a really strong antibody response. That's how it's built, to just do that one thing. That's kind of what the vaccine, that's what makes them work right, because we don't want it to do, we don't let it do other things and build it so it will do other things. We just show the one protein. So eating healthy is great, but won't stop you from getting COVID and the risk of one, here it is, one, if you catch COVID, you have 1 in 10 chance of having a significant negative outcome. So meaning you may end up hospitalized, ventilated, you may have long COVID. 1 in 10. If you are part of those hospitalized or ventilated folks, Dr. Henderson can straighten out my numbers, but somebody who is hospitalized with COVID, it's almost of those folks, it's about 1 in 5 people will end up potentially needing a ventilator or some other severe hospital support. And the people who are ventilated, now it's gotten better, I understand, but it was at some point earlier in the pandemic, it was like 1 out of 3 or 50-50 sometimes people ventilated whether they would come off the ventilator. So it's a really high risk of trouble, 1 in 10 chance that you will be stuck in the hospital or have long-term effects. This is a bad virus.
So SARS, this is part of the SARS family. Can you speak to that? What aspect?
Go ahead, Dr. Henderson.
I was going to say that's one of the things that's been kind of helpful in explaining why scientists were able to respond to this so quickly and in the way that they were. Like this COVID is not new. You know what I mean? We've dealt with different viruses in this family before. Coronavirus it's not new. This COVID-19, this is a new form of this virus that we're seeing, but we saw SARS before. So this is within that same fine family of viruses. So in terms of being able to look at the actual model behind it, being able to create a vaccine for it, it's not brand new. So that's something that was helpful. But honestly, we're going to see these things pop up. And when we're looking at Ebola, when you looked at Obama's response to Ebola, it's like I don't know what we're going to do when we have, an airborne virus that's highly infectious. And then here we go. We won't talk about how, that whole pandemic office was, just dismantled and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, but that's what we have. And so in being able to identify this virus, be able to relate it to the whole family of viruses that it's a part of, and being able to come up with a vaccine, like that's why all these things were able to happen so quickly, in addition to the fact that billions of dollars were then put behind it to go to for all these different corporations to go forth and create a vaccine. When it comes to all of our different medications, like, you know, vaccines for everything else, you do not have that same support. You do not have governments all over the world putting all of their money behind this one thing, like, and takes all the risk out of it for all of these corporations. So that's why, like, we've seen coronaviruses before, we had the mRNA technology, and now we have billions of dollars. That all of those things came together for this vaccine to be able to come out so quickly. And honestly, by this point, as these vaccines have been out long enough, the science behind it is solid. The studies behind it are solid. If you look at, for example, just the Pfizer, the randomized controlled trial, which is the best type of trial you can do, it included like 46,000 people with all kind of chronic diseases. I mean, you're talking about diabetes, hypertension, COPD, asthma, HIV, hepatitis B, like all kinds of things were included in this trial. And these individuals all did very, very well. It showed that it worked. There were no complications from their chronic diseases. And the same trials that we're seeing in the kids are showing the same things, you know, regardless of, you know, if they have asthma. And honestly, if they have things like asthma, they're at a higher risk. That those, you know, those children, is even more important to vaccinate them, and they do well. They do well. So yeah, it's all in the same family. And so we've got the science behind this.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, you know, having doctors address this, because as you know, in our community, people are just so afraid because of the history of what we have experienced in America. And so the trust factor is just, you know, just the things that we hear that are inaccurate, and we just have so much fear in our community.
Yeah, you know, can I speak to two of these myths?
Sure.
So I've seen, I've been dealing with a lot of my teenage kids who've been showing me, hey doc, what about this? So for example, Dr. Scott, you know, this is this Ohio doctor, he's a bald-headed dude, and he's in a video and a meme, you know, he comes up to the podium and he talks about how vaccines are dangerous and the COVID vaccine, blah blah blah. He says, I'm a doctor from Oxford. He's a doctor of education, though. Have you ever worked in any science? Have you ever worked in a lab? What I'm saying is I'm talking to parents about who are going back to school, but I'm not talking to them as an educator. I'm not a school teacher. I don't try to talk to them about how to study and do that, because I don't like that stuff, but because that's not my specialty. So I don't comment on economics. I don't comment on fashion. I just comment on molecular biology and science and public health. So the problem is, Dr. Scott, identify yourself, man. You're not a doctor of any scientific field. So why are you talking about this field that's outside of your area of expertise, as if you are a doctor? You didn't say, you know what I mean? We're all, you know, Dr. Jones is a doctor of psychology. You know, so everybody has their own specialty, but we try to talk about from our specialty. So that's what is dangerous, is that people who have different agendas. I always ask people, you know, when you hear about a doctor who's telling you about something, don't ask your friends, ask other doctors. What do you think of this guy? Dr. Scott, we don't like him. We think he's lying. So when I want to talk to when I want to find out about a good restaurant, I talk to a chef. Hey, what do you think of this restaurant? When I try to get if I try to fly, I want to fly a new airline, I don't talk to my friends. They don't know about airplanes. I talk to somebody who works at the airport. I have a buddy who's a mechanic. I have a buddy who's a pilot. Hey, what do you think of Frontier Airlines? Are they safe? So my point is that we are listening to people who don't. I was listening to Soul Illuminati. One of my patients said, "Hey, man, this brother, man, he's really awakened, and he's talking about he's not getting his vaccine." But young man, I mean, but you have 500 YouTube videos, but what does that have to do with understanding vaccines? You're explaining why you're afraid of vaccines. You're explaining how you feel about vaccines, but you're not. You don't understand vaccines. Of course you're afraid. Of course you're worried. Of course you have feelings, but don't use your feelings to keep people away from vaccines. Let's talk about your feelings, but don't talk about vaccines. It's not fair to say, I don't like them. You mean you understand that they are not safe because you studied them? You don't have to, it's not that we all have to know everything, but we have to get information from people who know something about that arena. When I'm trying to find out what's going on with COVID in the hospital, Dr. Henderson is in the hospital. That's why I ask her. She's asked me about the science stuff sometimes because I've been in the lab. So that's why we're saying, just listen to better people about this. Don't listen to everybody.
And you know, and that's a very good point. You know, we have to listen to the professionals. It is a long journey because people have so many concerns. And Dr. Fauci, everybody fell in love, well, most of us fell in love with Dr. Fauci. So it is good to have doctors who are on the ground in Philadelphia, just helping to spread the information, because we have lost so many loved ones to this, and it's just frightening. And as we start to wind down here, our last question for the night, I would ask this. With my attempt to always be optimistic, the question is this: what does it look like? What does an optimistic future, a hopeful future look like? And I know how we get there with masks, with washing our hands, with social distancing. But if you can look in your mind's eye, with this being the last question for the night, how do you see us, or when do you see us, whichever one you choose to pick, getting to a place of normal? Will we get back to where we were? Do we become better as a society? Or what? How do you see the future, if you could look from an optimistic view, if that's possible?
Yeah, you know, it's easy. It's easy to be optimistic. 2 million Philadelphians, right? 60 to 70% of them are vaccinated. Even in Philadelphia, we think we're terrible. We don't do anything. Yes, we do. We're just as good as everybody else. We get vaccinated more than folks in other parts of the country. So we think we're trouble. We're not. We try to be compliant and understand things too. So of those people, maybe there's 500,000 folks who are vulnerable to COVID left in this greater Philadelphia area, who either half of folks for sure are fully vaccinated. So they really are not vulnerable to the chance of death the way that some folks would be. And then there's some folks who have actually caught COVID, like myself, but unlike myself, didn't get vaccinated. They have some immunity, but if they get vaccinated, they will have even one booster, they will have great immunity. And so now we're down to, maybe it's 250,000 people left, 300,000 folks. And then there's the 250,000 kids who cannot be vaccinated yet. The vaccines for down to 5, they might be ready and available as soon as October. So we could get 250,000 Philadelphians, adults who are just being hesitant. If they got vaccinated, that would push us above 80%. And then if the 250,000 kids who then would be able to get vaccinated, got vaccinated, the virus would kind of burn out. It wouldn't have enough people to infect to spread around quickly. It would be those 1 or 2 cases, 1 or 2 people in the hospital. But when it has hundreds of thousands of people, it can spread like wildfire in neighborhoods. So, but that could happen. We could get there in 2 months, September and October. We could have the adults just say, hey, you know what, let's just get this done. And they could get there by October. And then the vaccine for the little kids would get there by November. And we could be like feeling non-freaked out by Thanksgiving. And I want to feel that way.
I think, at some point, like we need to be looking at this the same way we look at polio. We don't see it anymore because everyone's, fully vaccinated. Everyone, we'll see where they end up landing when it comes to things like boosters. But, that could be what we're seeing, where it's just not seen anymore because we've taken care of it. We've addressed it. And that's my prayer. I think there's a good chance that we could come out, better on the other side of this. We've come out with science and ways to respond to viruses, to pandemics better. And I think a big part of that, though, is that we've got to just not just care about ourselves, but we've got to care about our fellow humans. We've got to care about the people around us. We've got to care about, risking exposing other people, risking exposing family members. And so, like, I think when we get to that place, I think that, we can definitely move forward as a people, move forward as humanity. As Dr. King is talking about us getting vaccinated, protecting those kids, and then eventually our kids can get vaccinated. We have to remember that, like, our kids are scared, like they're really scared. Like, no child, like they can see what's going on, they hear what's going on, they know people are dying of COVID. So when you have a kid that you've got to bring in, to get tested, I've had to bring my son is, quite active, and we do our best. He does his best with his math, but he's a very active 9-year-old. And so he's gotten tested, a number of times, and each time I can see he's actually scared, he's nervous. He's asking me every day, did that result come back yet? And so being able to take some of that anxiety off of our children by vaccinating everyone around them, and then as soon as they can, getting them vaccinated, I can see how, my daughter's much more, relaxed after that. And so we've got to keep that in mind. We have that power to protect our children and to take some of that fear and anxiety, off of their plate, which they definitely deserve. So I'm hopeful that we can get there. We can reach the promised land when it comes to this. I'm a little nervous. I am, but I try and be hopeful.
Yeah, me too. I think we will get there. I really don't. I am not. I'm discouraged. I am encouraged, because we just have to keep talking to each other. Everybody has to just help everybody feel more confident and comfortable. Hey, you know what? It's the vaccine. Everybody's gotten hundreds of millions of people have gotten it. Come on, just get your vaccine so you won't spread COVID around. So you won't give it to all these other people. And when we do that, now in the meantime, yeah, it looks like we're wearing our masks again. I put my mask away in the summer. I was like, oh man, where did I put them all? I'd wear them at work, but I thought I could walk around. Nope, that's what Delta told me no. So, but guess what? A couple more months, if we get vaccinated, it's not like we have to know a couple more years of this is going to happen. We could just all be vaccinated and be immune and be done. So it is different if people would just stop looking at the wrong memes and look at information that they've heard from folks who understand. So I really want everyone to know that your kids can stay in school if we can get the adults around them vaccinated. If we can, they have to wear some masks for a few more months. There's going to be some testing to make sure they haven't brought COVID in. But the best way for them not to bring COVID in is to not be around unvaccinated adults in their communities and households, because then they're unlikely to bring COVID in, and then they're unlikely to spread COVID. So we want everybody to do this. And we want everybody to know they can get back to school to stay. It will be good. We want them in school. We know how hard it is. And we know we all deserve to get to the other side of this. It is the promised land. And we have to understand it wasn't accidental. We are working to get there, not just doctors, educators, community folks. This coalition is hundreds of groups. We all want to be on the other side of this. I want to talk about something else. Some bullying prevention. That'd be nice. You can't bully people on Zoom. That's no fun. I want to talk about in-person trouble. I would love that this conversation to be ending, but we have to get this message to each other and let people believe us. They have to believe we are right, that the vaccine is just the tool we have to use for this, not everything, this thing. So I think Dr. Henderson is right, that this is the promised land, and we know we can get there. We all just want to put on our masks, roll up our sleeves, pray if you need to, cry if you need to, but get people to do the right thing. Get back to school.
Now you would be surprised that they can actually manage to bully on Zoom. I mean, like kids are.
I've heard.
brilliant.
I know it's.
That chat box, those
I
little
know
private,
that chat box.
little private groups. I'm telling you. But
That's. We do not want to see how that world becomes the main world, though. We want to have regular, old-fashioned, in-person tussles again. I would love to work on some more skin knees and
right.
and elbows.
And I know we're wrapping up, but just to kind of hammer in, as we were talking about all that false information that's going out there, obviously we know there's no chip in our vaccines. There's a chip in your phone, so why would they need to do that? No, it cannot make you infertile. I've had plenty of patients who got their vaccines, and now I'm now doing their OB care and will deliver their babies when they decide to have them. So that's not a thing either. And like we said, it does not change your DNA. Talk to your doctor. Like go and ask your doctor questions. Say, hey, can we just have a visit just to talk about this? Those are the people you can trust. If you're looking online, things that end in .gov, .edu are much more trustworthy than the meme that you saw on Facebook or your friend's TikTok. Just to kind of hammer
That's right.
in.
And www.blackdoctorsphiladelphia.com. We will post this video we'll post it on We Reign, and we'll post it on Mantua Worldwide. And we're going to try to edit it down, to something folks can handle.
Yeah, yeah.
We did we were trying to say a lot today.
Yeah,
But we will get it back out, and we'll email it back out to the network and send it. So www.blackdoctorsphiladelphia.com. And we are happy to reach out, and we'll put the message out there and put it up on social media. We don't know, and that's on www.blackdoctorsphiladelphia.com. We have our physicians directory. We're gonna make it a little better. We're still in the 1990s website, but we're making it better. But that is the doctors who are members and affiliated with the National Medical Association, the Association of Black African American Physicians and the communities they serve. So we want everybody to find us and reach out.
Yeah.
And we love y'all, and we want everybody to stay safe.
Yeah, and again, thank you, doctors, for taking your time out to explain this to everyday folk and breaking things down thoroughly. And the people who I invited tonight, they are people who, most of them were reared in Mantua, or they have very close ties, like they attend the church, they work at the schools. And so I will promise you this, we will get the word out. As a matter of fact, Mantua Worldwide is having its Zoom meeting. We're looking at next Thursday, and I'm going to see if we're going to have it at 12 noon or if we're going to have it after 5 o'clock. But we're going to start getting Mantua moving forward. And, that's why we are Mantua Worldwide Community Incorporated. That is our goal. We're here to help. We're here to partner every which way we can. So thank you all. Again, that's blackdoctorsphiladelphia.com. Dr. Henderson, thank you so much. Dr. King, thank you all so much.
No problem.
All right. God bless you guys. Have a great night. Thank you guys for attending tonight. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Be safe.
Safe.